and it's got a little bit of this kind of barnyard funkiness to it. This beautiful rose gold kind of color that I'm absolutely loving. Fruit.
The liquid culture.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Liquid Culture with me, Mitchell Chirac. Man, I really want to do the whole Joe Rogan intro from his podcast. What's up, mother? But it's a family show. My wife tells me it's not a good look, so we're just gonna stick with the regular intro, guys. Big news today. Big news on the show. I have finally decided to stick with the deli spitter. I know you guys are really curious about this. I've been looking for something to spit my wines and beer and such into, something better than the deli spitter because it's just kind of plastic, but I couldn't find anything that I really enjoyed. So I decided to keep it. Decided to give it a little Virgil Abloh off-white makeover. So we're sticking with it. We're sticking with the deli spitter. I'm really happy about it. I think that it's going to be good. I think it's going to be a good relationship between me and the deli spitter. Happy that I could come to a happy conclusion in this long-standing search for a good spitter to have on the show. I think this is going to work out well. So today is a big bit of contention in today's episode. So what we're talking about today on the Liquid Culture is natural wines. So we aren't going too deep into one grape varietal, one region, one producer. We are talking about, in general, natural wine. You may or may not have heard about natural wine. It is some might call it a trend, although natural wines have been, being produced for hundreds of years in some old world countries, and for some reason it's just now becoming like a point or a topic of discussion in the wine world. And you've got, much like anything, you've got people who are very adamant to the far left and the far right about it, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. But it's again, I use trend in quotations because it's something that has generated a lot of buzz over the last few years, so much so that as this trend is reaching other places of the country, people in New York and LA are kind of sick of hearing about it already, because again, you have people who are so adamant about natural wine or nothing that it gets to be one of those things where people get tired of hearing about it. But it is an important thing, and it is an important topic, and an important, honestly, an important response to some things that were happening in the world of wine, especially in the early 2000s in places like California, where you had wines that were being made with a lot of chemicals, a lot of things were being added to wine. The fruit wasn't really the star of the show, and you had a lot of things, almost kind of like preservatives in food. Right now, we're past the trend phase of organic, natural, whole foods, to where it's just kind of part of people's everyday lives now as a response to things like, highly processed foods, packaged foods, things that people were doing to foods to make them more shelf stable, do things to get a better profit. But maybe not so good for your health. And the same kind of thing is happening with wine. Wines were being made with a lot of additional chemicals. Things were being added in the vineyard, in the winemaking process, in the bottle, and it was really kind of something that was being done in order to keep wines more shelf stable, to keep in this kind of very almost like house style. You want your wines to taste the exact same every single year for your people who are really big fans of your wine. But it went a little bit too far. So the whole natural wine movement has really been kind of a response to that. But again, like everything, it can be taken a little bit too far in some cases, and people can really run with it if they feel like it's something that kind of defines them as a person. So we're going to talk about natural wine today. We're going to taste a few natural wines. I personally love a lot of natural wines. I think that there are some out there that definitely venture into we're trying so hard to be natural that we're not making good wine anymore. But there are some that are really, really tasty, and it's great to drink them. What is natural wine? There's not a specific guideline for what makes a natural wine. It is just this generic kind of gray area that wines can kind of fall into, and even some wine producers who make wine in a natural style are wanting to distance themselves from this kind of moniker because it kind of pigeonholes you a little bit. Into if you are kind of starting to be considered a natural winemaker, I'm using a lot of quotations today, guys. If you were considered a natural winemaker, if you're not making your wines in that really extreme style, then you might not be getting the best write-ups from people who are super pro-natural wine. So a lot of these winemakers who make their wines in this style are trying to distance themselves from that moniker a little bit. But really what it is, guys, is natural wines are just that. They're wines that are made in as natural of a style as possible. Natural wine producers are making wines where really what they're trying to do is pick the fruit, put it in, go through the winemaking process, let it ferment, let it age, put it in a bottle, and serve it, and let the fruit give its best expression possible. Minimal chemicals, or no chemicals in the vineyard. Certainly none in the winemaking process. There are some different techniques in the winemaking process that are becoming associated with natural winemakers, things such as skin contact, pet nat style sparkling wines, no sulfur or minimal sulfur. These things are all associated with the kind of natural wine movement. So let's dive into the wines, guys. The first one we are starting with is one of my personal favorites, and actually a wine that kind of got me into natural wine. I tried Gut Ogau for the first time at Theodore Rex, which is an incredible restaurant in Houston, Texas. It's a restaurant whose kind of it's almost like the menu is like the natural wine of food, right? So that's kind of how they try and make their food there. So naturally, their wine list is something that they had curated specifically to pair with those foods. So Gut Ogau, they are a natural wine producer. I got to stop using these quotations here because that's going to get a little annoying. But they are a natural wine producer from Burgenland, Austria. They make a portfolio of sparkling white, rosé, and red wine, so they make a very large array of wines. But one of the things that really stood out to me about Gut Ogau and what really caught my eye was their labels, and I love the labels. They have come up with this fictional family that they've created. What they wanted to do was when they started making these wines back in 2007, they wanted to have a face, right? Of the wine based off of the style of wine. So they made the wine and they thought, okay, what is the personality of this wine? And let's create a family, a fictional family, with all these members of the family and their personalities matching what we get from the wine. So this is Timotheus. It's a 2015. It is a blend of Weissburgunder, which is also known as Pinot Blanc, and Gruner Veltliner. So two very, very common grapes for that area of the world. They're in Austria. Two very common white varietals. It's, like I said, the 2015, you've got about 12.5% alcohol, which is also something that you see associated a lot with natural wine, and that's a lower alcohol percentage. They want to make wines that are picked earlier, fresher acidity, lower alcohol, wines that you can just pound and are just real nice crunchy wines. I love the smell of this wine, guys. I love the smell of it because to me this smells very much like a really well-crafted high altitude cider. It has this very cider, apple cider thing going on with it. There's some chalkiness there though too. There's some minerality, and but it's a lot of that really crisp apple cider kind of thing. And it's got a little bit of this kind of barnyard funkiness to it. A very, very fun nose and something that smells like a wine that I could very easily chug. I almost didn't spit that one out because it tastes just like it smells. So you've got this really nice bright acidity, but you have this very apple cider thing going on with this wine, this like bruised apple kind of thing. It's not a lot of citrus like a lot of people expect with white wines. There's really no, at least in my opinion, there's no citrus here. There's good acid, but it's like apple. It's like very apple acid that it's like lacto acid for sure. Very smooth, very creamy, very apple. And there's a little bit of that chalkiness, which kind of plays into that kind of smooth, creamy thing. And I say chalkiness because it is, if you think about a like sidewalk chalk versus like a rock, the sidewalk chalk is a much softer kind of rocky, chalky thing, as opposed to like a very minerally graphite kind of thing. So this is a very soft, smooth, supple apple chalk. It's really, really interesting, really incredible food pairing wine here, especially I would say something around like the holidays. Like this is putting off a lot of like kind of Thanksgiving, Christmas kind of vibes for me here. Definitely a food pairing wine for something around those kind of like holiday meals. He impresses people with his strong, powerful, and balanced character. He stands with both feet firmly planted on the ground, but is nonetheless open-minded and always looking for new challenges. That is the description that Gut Ogau has come up with for Timotheus, and I think it's a nice little narrative for this wine. Very tasty wine, guys. This wine, I believe I purchased it for about $50 a bottle, which I know is steep for a white wine, especially for a natural white wine. But Gut Ogau is they're kind of one of those kind of cult following wines, so their prices are a little bit steeper, but I think a very, very interesting wine for me. Hard wreck on the Gut Ogau, even at $50. I think that I think it's really interesting, and I think that a lot of people might enjoy that wine. So, moving on, Alma Negra Brut Nature. If you've watched the videos here before, guys, you've seen me talk about Alma Negra. They are from Mendoza, Argentina, so I'm not going to get too much into the producer on Alma Negra here today, because if you want to know more, go to the, I believe it's in my pre-South America trip that I took, that video. We talk about Alma Negra. We do one of their red wines there. But Brut Nature, this is actually the first wine that I had from Alma Negra, and the wine that got me interested in learning more about them because of how much I enjoyed this wine. So if you look at it, guys, it's a beautiful color. Look at that. I mean, to me, that's more like kind of orange wine than it is a rosé, and it is sparkling. If you guys can see, I mean, you could probably tell from the bottle, it is a sparkling wine. But that's another one of those kind of styles that is associated with natural wine, is that orange wine, because what you have is you have this is not that. But what you have are white wines that were allowed to sit on the skin for longer periods than what a traditional white wine is allowed to do. So you get a little bit more color that comes off of those skins. With this is a rosé because it is made with a blend of Malbec and Pinot Noir. So this is classified as a sparkling rosé, but I mean, that color, guys, is beautiful. It's this beautiful rose gold kind of color that I'm absolutely loving. With these guys, the reason I've included them in this lineup here is it is a sparkling wine made in the natural champagne method style, but it is also a wine that is made with grapes grown in a biodynamic vineyard. So because of the amount of wine that Almanegra produces, I think that some of those real hardcore natural wine folks might disagree with me that this should be considered a natural wine. But again, it's a super gray area. So for me, I'm going to consider this a natural wine because it's a biodynamic grapes, because they're made in a very traditional kind of champagne style, and honestly, because the color's kind of orange and fun and not something that you expect from a standard rosé. I mean, that is not the color of a standard sparkling rosé. The nose on it is super funky too, which again, natural wine, very gray area. I like to think of wines, of natural wines in a slightly more liberal standpoint than some other people who are hardcore about it. And if I get a funky nose on something like this, I'm going to immediately start thinking about natural wine production. And I don't know, because of Almanegra, they have such a very mysterious kind of branding. They have such a mysterious branding that they put out. They don't share a ton about how they make their wines, but based off of the nose, this could have some native yeast that they use to ferment this wine. I don't know, but it smells really funky. There's a little bit of, so this one has a little bit of apple, but it's more, to me, kind of red apple. And I get lime. I get like straight lime, not lemon, which you can get a lot with white wines, with sparkling wines. You get a lot of lemon. This one has almost like a lime with like a pink Himalayan sea salt. So almost like a Goza beer. If you've ever had a Goza, they're made with coriander, they're made with lime, they're made with salt. A lot of times, definitely the salt and the coriander, but you get some of them made with lime, and this has that kind of smell to it. Really, really nice. There's a little bitterness on the finish, which I'm not a huge fan of. It might go away in the second sip, but it's very full flavored. I mean, this is a really surprisingly good sparkling wine. It's got a lot of character to it. That lime is there. It's got a little saltiness on it with a little bit of sweetness. It's like a sweet lemon lime, salty thing. Definitely another good food pairing wine, I think. The acidity isn't crazy high on this, and the effervescence isn't crazy high either. It's not crazy bubbly. Really creamy, smooth, almost kind of feels like it went through like malolactic fermentation a little bit before they did the carbonation, the method champenois carbonation on it, which is all done in the bottle. It's super smooth. The acidity, again, it's well balanced body with acidity, and the bubbles, again, aren't crazy bubbly, so you can taste a lot more of the wine without a super high effervescence. The bitterness fades out. You do have some grapefruit on the palate for me, very citrusy on the palate, but there's something like almost like red apple or something, like a red apple that gives this kind of creamy thing going on with it as well. Really, really tasty wine. This $20. $20 a bottle on this, 13% alcohol, biodynamic vineyard. It is aged 8 months on lees, so dead yeast cells, which add to that creamy thing. So that might actually be where that cream is coming from, as opposed to a malolactic fermentation, which it could be both, could be a little bit of both, but really tasty. And this is a wine, guys, that you can find, wine.com. You can pick this up. This guy's a little bit more difficult to find. You have to really kind of search out your like natural wine shops and stuff like that to get this guy, but this is pretty readily available on like wine.com. Okay. Up next, guys, we're going with Cruz wine. I love this label as well. I actually really love all these labels here today, guys. I love the way that Cruz does their labeling. They use these kind of fun, old school, like Western photographs. As well as some other of them have like industrial, like bridges and stuff like that, kind of an industrial vibe. But then they splatter this very bright, vibrant paint on it. And it makes for a really cool label. And then with Cruz, we're super transparent. Cruz is making their labels with a lot of information on them. And actually, I wanted to do that. A lot of information go on their labels. You see where the grapes are coming from. You see their production amount that they used for the wine. Obviously vintage and things of that nature. This is their 2016 Valdigues, which I believe I'm saying right, Valdigues or Valdigues. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's Valdigues, which is a grape that is almost like Gamay. So those of you who are familiar with Beaujolais, Beaujolais wines are made with Gamay, and Gamay is a grape that has been really kind of drug into this whole natural wine thing, because in Beaujolais you have a lot of natural wine producers. Gamay produces a wine very light, fruity, good acidity, and Valdigues is almost kind of like the California Gamay. So Cruz Wine Company. So Michael Cruz, he is a big name in the natural wine scene. He makes a really nice lineup of Cruz Wine Company wines, but he's also really well known for his very limited, very highly sought after, very big hype sparkling wine, which is ultramarine, and that's a wine that if you ask anybody kind of in that natural wine scene, they know ultramarine, because that is it is like a unicorn natural wine. But that's a separate label. So Cruz Wine Company, Valdigues 2016. Again, Michael Cruz is one of those very minimalistic winemakers. He's wanting to make very bright, fresh, fruit-forward, low sulfur, low chemical in the vineyard, all that good stuff with his wines. And again, this is his Valdigues, which, it smells very fruit-forward, very, very fruit-forward. Like almost like Hawaiian Punch, like the drink Hawaiian Punch, fruit-forward. It's got this very kind of candied, all fruit. Even like kind of like lifesaver type thing going on, which I hope you guys aren't taking that as it's a bad thing or a negative thing. It's a very good thing. This smells very, very fresh, very vibrant, very crunchy, something I want to chug like the rest of these wines have been. Lots of fruit here. All the fruits. Take them all. All the fruits are in here. All of them. The berries, the apples, the stone fruits, tropical fruits. I'm smelling all of that in here. Oh, got a little splashback. Deli spitter. Not doing good for me today. Really nice structure. There's I would say medium tannin, medium acid, really well balanced overall in the structure. The fruits there mean, straight up fruit, guys. I mean, fruit cocktail, fruit punch, fruit candies, fruit jello. I mean, it's not a sweet wine. Don't take that the wrong way. But fruit, like fruit. Lots of fruit. Very tasty. Not to me like a wine I would do with food. It's just kind of like, I didn't chill this down at all. I would chill the hell out of this thing. Not like white wine chill, but definitely chill it down. Drink it, out on the porch, out in the backyard. Not a super serious, complicated wine. It's just a lot of fruit, but it's got a really good balanced palate with the tannin, the acid, the body. It's all right in that like medium kind of area there. Really nice. And this is a wine, guys. So Cruz, almost in the contract to the Alma Negra, Cruz wines are pretty difficult to get, more or less. So you have to get on their allocation list, which it's pretty simple, actually. You just kind of go on their website, join the waiting list. Hopefully they have some spots open up to where you can get on there and get their wines. But I mean, there was 1 barrel of this wine produced, guys. I mean, 1 barrel of this was produced. They also do a Val de Guay Nouveau, which is made very similar to Beaujolais Nouveau, again, that Gamay thing that they make as well. But 1 barrel of this wine was produced, guys. So if you wanna get some Cruz wines, I think this was a $30 bottle, which is a little bit more in that natural wine price range, whereas the Goutte Ogal tends to be a little higher. A lot of times you see natural wines in that kind of $25 to $35 a bottle range. So this is there, but still kind of difficult to get unless you are on their allocation list. In fact, because this is a 2016 and there were so few of these bottles produced, chances are if you don't have one of these bottles already, you probably won't be able to get one. You'll have to wait until their future vintages of this wine come out for allocation via their website. So Cruz Wines, definitely a big player in the natural wine scene, guys. Yeah, I mean, that's nice. That's nice. Napa fruit, Rancho Chimiles is where the fruit comes from. Not crazy serious, really fun, easy drinking wine from Napa Valley, made in that kind of natural wine style, guys. Okay, up next, last but not least, Mathiasen. This is another one that if you guys have watched other videos in the past, you've seen me talk about Mathiasen. Another big kind of established name in the natural wine scene. Steve Mathiasen has been featured on the Somm documentaries. He's been nominated for James Beard Awards. So again, I don't want to get too much into Mathiasen for the sake of time. If you guys want to know more about Mathiasen, check out my Tale of Two Cabs video that I put out, where I paired kind of a natural Napa Valley Cabernet against a very traditional kind of big dog player Napa Valley Cabernet. So this is the 2011 Napa Valley red wine. So this is a blend. It is almost like a right bank Bordeaux blend. You've got primarily Merlot, a little bit of Cabernet, well, a little bit, there's about 30-something% Cabernet, and then you have a little bit of things like Malbec, Petit Verdot, Cab Franc that come in to make that up. So I would say that I wanted to do this one last because it is probably the biggest style wine that we have here, but still we're looking at about 13.5% on the alcohol, but certainly this is the most expensive wine here at right now. You can find it for about 90 plus bucks, which I don't think is what I paid for it from when I visited the vineyard, but it was still pretty expensive though, guys. So definitely the big dog on the list here, but still a natural wine. You've got organic vineyards, native yeast, minimalistic winemaking style. So that's what you get with Mathiasen. This one doesn't have the same smell that the first three have. I mean, yes, all three of the first ones have a different characteristics with their nose, but they all have this almost kind of, if you've smelled and tasted enough natural wines, you almost can kind of pick up a natural wine from a more traditional wine or a wine made in a more traditional style. This one has a little bit more of a nose like a pretty standard Napa Valley big kind of red wine. It has definitely more oak characteristic on it, which I think they use about 50% new oak on this wine, whereas you really got zero oak even with the Cruise Red. You really didn't get any oak on that. This one you get more of that oak characteristic, those toasty, vanilla, coconutty kind of things. But very nice. I mean, it smells like a wine that my wife would love. Really well balanced. A little caramel note coming out of here as well, along with definitely more in that kind of either stewed red fruits or cooked red fruits, really ripe red fruits, almost leading into the black fruits. And a little licorice. I think that this is definitely a much more complex nose than the Valdiguet from Cruise. Easily the most serious wine in the lineup here, guys. This one's got much stronger tannin, much stronger acid than the Valdiguet, but still really incredibly well balanced. This wine, I think, is definitely a food pairing wine. I know that you think Napa Valley, you think red wine, it's probably something big and bold, so pair it with a steak or something like that. I wouldn't go that far. It's still a very feminine wine, and I think that if you put this wine next to like another Napa Valley red wine that isn't made by someone who is doing more minimalistic, low alcohol, high acidity red wines, that other wine that you put it next to would really blow it up and you would have a completely different thing. But because this wine is the kind of the biggest wine that we have on this lineup, it definitely does stand out, but I think it is still very feminine. It is still very subtle and complex. You definitely still have more oak with this wine, but I think that after sipping on it a little bit here, it is definitely more red fruit. It's cherries and raspberries. That red apple is there. I think on this wine, and a little bit of that kind of funkiness that you do get with like native yeast. And really nice, really nice wine for $90. I think that $90 is pricey. If you guys can find maybe a later vintage at a cheaper price, I think it's well worth it. And don't take that as I'm not a fan of Mathiasen, because I definitely am a huge fan of Mathiasen. And as you'll see from my Tale of Two Calves video, that one for me, the Mathiasen blew the other wine out of the water. But at $90, I don't know if this wine, it kind of falls into that weird space of, if you want a natural wine, you generally go more kind of fresh and fruity on the cheaper end of things, at $35 range. If you're going to spend $90 on a Napa Valley red wine, you're generally looking for something a little bit bigger than this. But I love this wine though. I love this wine. So if you guys can find a later vintage, maybe for cheaper than that $90 mark, I think that you definitely should go that route and check Mathiasen out. They make a lot of really good things. A lot of really interesting wines coming from Steve Mathiasen, and they were very, very hospitable to me and my wife when we came down to visit them. So, guys, that's natural wine. I tried to keep it as condensed as possible. I didn't want to turn this into a 2-hour long video, which we very easily could with natural wine, because there's a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of debate, and these aren't the only places you're seeing natural wine, guys. So we had Austria, we had Argentina, and then we had 2 California wines, both coming from Napa Valley. But natural wines are being made all over the world. You're having them come out of other old world countries, especially France. It was interesting, actually. I'm just now realizing I didn't include a French wine in here, which is kind of where a lot of these ideals were invented. As well as in places like Greece and Italy. You have a lot of, maybe not so much Italy, but in those kind of other Mediterranean climates, you've got a lot of them coming out of there. You've also got a lot of them coming from really everywhere in the United States. Oregon, New York State, Texas is getting into the natural wine game. And I think that it's definitely something that will not be a trend. I think that natural wine will turn into just a kind of commonplace, like organic whole foods have become in our diet. I think that natural wines have a place going forward. It is not just a trend. I think you will see it kind of mellow out a little bit, but the natural wines are here to stay, guys, because there are, much like all 3 of these. I mean, I would recommend all 4 of these wines. I would recommend all 4 of these wines because they're really solid. They're really solid wines, and these aren't the only natural wines I've had that are really solid. There's a lot of really good ones out there. So go find your local kind of natural wine store. I know for us here in Dallas, it's Bar and Garden. I know Pogo's has. They're starting to increase their inventory of natural wine, so you can find them in Dallas, and I know there are places all over the country that have natural wine stores. So, and if not, get online. Try and find some natural wines online. Taste them, see what you think, and enjoy. Thanks for joining me today, guys. The Liquid Culture, Mitchell Chirac. Have a good one. Bye-bye.